Okay, great. Well, thank you again for coming to my presentation on winter hiking basics. Just a little bit about my background winter hiking. I'm definitely not a pro, but I've been doing it for 3 seasons now. And I mostly go up to the White Mountains in New Hampshire, but also sometimes in Maine. And the conditions I talk about are going to be similar to conditions that you'd see in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and also the Adirondack Mountains of New York. And there is like a lot of variety of what you can do when you are winter hiking. Mostly what I do is below tree line with a few like exposed sections, especially towards the ends, like on the summit. So if you're below tree line, you're generally more sheltered and just less exposed to the harsh wind and harsh weather conditions. But you also don't get as many great views as if you are above tree line. Conditions tend to be harder, definitely more windy, more ice, but then that's sometimes like when you get the best views. And there is like a lot of variety of what you can do. You could do a really basic hike, just like going out maybe to a frozen lake or something, versus people do like 30-mile winter days. They do traverses through like the whole presidential range in New Hampshire. So that's like 20 miles above tree line. People do ice climbing, people do winter backpacking trips. So there's a really big range of what you can do. Sorry, I just gotta get the next slide to go. So what I'll talk about in this presentation is a little bit about the weather that you'll see up there and the risks that the weather kind of brings. I'll talk about gear and how you kind of can use your gear to stay safe and mitigate those risks. And then I'll talk about some of the advantages of winter hiking. Okay, so just first a little bit about the weather. Winter lasts a really long time up in the White Mountains. This picture of me on the summit of South Twin Mountain is from October 21st. So winter starts really early and also goes really late. It's May, what is it? It's May 6th, and there is snow in the forecast for the mountains for this weekend. So snow definitely goes into April, sometimes into May. And you don't really see a lot of the big like snow meltouts, especially on the summits, until mid to late May. So you might think, oh, I'm going on like a nice fall hike or a nice spring hike. But definitely at the summits, you'll probably see snow in those shoulder seasons. So it's just really important to be prepared for that. And then the second image is a picture of a weather forecast of the day I was going to go hiking. And it's kind of hard to see in the image, but in the pink and purple, it says 3 and 7. And those are like the high and low temperatures for the day. And I know that sounds like really cold, but with the proper gear, it's like, that's totally doable. But under that, you'll see -24 and -13. And that's the temperature with the wind chill. So that's something that is doable if you feel prepared and if you feel you have the right gear. But for me, like I wouldn't feel comfortable with a -24 wind chill. So I decided not to go that day. So it's definitely really important to look at like a detailed mountain weather forecast versus just like looking at your iPhone app. Because the iPhone weather for like the closest town for this day was probably totally different. So that's definitely a way that people can run into trouble, is if they don't look at a more detailed forecast. So the risks that go along with this weather, the biggest one is probably hypothermia. If you're unprepared, if you don't know what the weather is going to be like, or if you don't have the right gear, it's definitely easy to contract hypothermia when it's 3 degrees. There's also other risks like avalanches. Dehydration is actually a really big risk in the winter. Just like slipping and falling on ice and snow, that's a risk. And there's also not a ton of sunlight. The sun will set there like 4:30. So those are just things that you need to be aware of and be prepared for. So this is a video I have. Hopefully it works. And if you hear that crackling, that's actually the wind. And you can kind of see the wind like whipping through everyone's gear. So it definitely gets really, really intense sometimes, especially on summits like this. You can tell, no views that day because of the clouds, but you can tell that the summit is very exposed. Okay, so some of the gear that you can use to keep yourself safe and to make sure that you are actually having fun and not just freezing the whole time. So when you're going out, you should be prepared with like a base layer. So that's just like a simple top and bottom, your lightest layer, and it should really be like a wool or synthetic material. Definitely no cotton, because cotton is not a good like moisture wicking material. So when you sweat, which you probably will, like even if it's freezing, you're going to be exerting a lot of energy going uphill. If you're wearing cotton, the water is just going to like stick there and then it's going to freeze. And that's like a really good way to become hypothermic. So this is my base layer shirt. It's just like a very simple wool shirt. And then I have just these basic wool leggings. And these are really great. They're really durable. I really only have like one of everything for winter hiking. So I wear these all the time. And then for the middle layers on top, it's kind of just like do whatever makes you feel most comfortable. It's definitely good to have a lot of layers because as I said, you're probably going to get hot as you're like exerting energy to get to the top. But if you're standing on the summit or even when you're going down, it's really easy to get cold. So you want to have a lot of options. This is a sweater that I wear a lot as like a middle layer, and I really like it. It's super warm and it also has a hood. So if I don't feel like taking my hat out of my bag or whatever, it's easy just to flip up the hood. And then sometimes I'll bring like one or two other middle layers too. But then it's important to always bring like a puffy jacket. This is mine. And there are two types you can get. You could either get down or synthetic. And this is down, and down is typically warmer, but it's also not waterproof. So if there's a chance of like snow or rain, you just need to be extra careful to kind of keep this safe and not wet. So that's why I have this like outer shell layer. And you should always bring like an outer shell layer when you're going hiking, winter hiking, because it's like protects you from the wind and also from any weather, snow. When I was talking about the weather earlier, I probably should have mentioned that it's also like super unpredictable. There could be like 0 chance of snow and then you get there and it starts to snow. So it's definitely good to have a waterproof layer. If you're doing some of the more intense above tree line hikes, some more like mountaineering, you'll probably have like a heavier shell, like that's something that's more insulated. I went with a lighter one because I knew I was going to do mostly below tree line, and I also tend to run warm when I'm hiking, so I know that like I don't really need that extra layer, but it will take a while if you're looking to start winter hiking, just to like pick your gear and figure out what works best for you. And then for the bottom, I just have these. They're really rain pants. Again, like with the outer shell, these are not super well insulated, but you could get pants that are well insulated. But these just work for me because they're waterproof. They also have a zipper that goes all the way down. So if I needed to slip them off, if I got too warm hiking, I could slip them off without taking my boots off, which is great because you definitely don't want like your feet exposed when it's super cold outside. So then for the feet, I have a super warm pair of just wool socks. Some people will wear 2 different layers of socks, but also sometimes that causes blisters, like if the layers are rubbing together. So just one works for me. If it's gonna be extra cold, I'll probably just throw like a foot warmer in my boot as well. And then these are the boots that I have. If you're going up to like higher elevations, your typical like summer hiking boots just are probably not going to be warm enough, even if you have like a super thick sock. So you have to get like special rated winter hiking boots. If you're doing some more mountaineering, you need even more intense boots. You're going to have like a double plastic mountaineering boot. So that'll almost be like a ski boot with this boot inside of it. So those are very, very intense. And then lastly, we'll have these gaiters that will just wrap around the boot and wrap around your like most outer leg pant layer so that no snow or ice gets in your shoe. And then for like kind of accessories, gloves, these are like my thick pair of kind of outer layer gloves. I have like liner gloves as well. So kind of like your outfit, it's just all about the different layers. You want to have options. These ones are nice because they actually have this little zipper that you could put a hand warmer in if it's going to be really, really cold. I have just like a regular basic hat and also like a headband that I wear. I have this buff that I'll wear over my neck too, if my neck is cold, and just like I could put it up to my nose, kind of like a mask, and that'll keep your face extra warm. So as you can see, it's definitely like a lot of clothing, but it's definitely important to be prepared and have the right amount of clothing. But you also don't want to overdo it and bring too much, especially for me. Like, I'm not great at carrying weight on my back. Like, it slows me down a ton. So it's definitely just about finding that balance where you're prepared and you have extra layers, but you're not overburdening yourself with like bringing everything that you own. So then in terms of traction, you definitely can't just go like in your boots, you'll like slip and fall a ton. So there are 3 different kind of levels of traction that you have, and the trail will kind of dictate, the trail and conditions will dictate which ones you use. So these are just like plain micro spikes. Some people even have these for just like walking around the city after a big snow or ice storm. And these are great to use when the trail has already been used a lot. So the snow is like packed down and kind of frozen and you're not gonna sink into it. If there's fresh snow and like no one else has used the trail yet, you're gonna have to use your snowshoes, which these are the ones I have. These are like special mountaineering snowshoes. They're like a little bit different than just plain recreational ones. They have these kind of bigger spikes in them to keep you more stable in the snow. And snowshoeing is definitely, like, if anyone has ever done it, it's a lot of work. If you're going up and you're breaking trail, like no one has been on it before, you're going to be exerting a lot of energy. So that's something just to be prepared for. And if you know you're going to be breaking trail, it's helpful to go in kind of a bigger group so you could trade off being the first one in line, so no one is like breaking trail for the whole time. And if it has just snowed and you don't have your snowshoes, that could be a problem because you're very likely to post hole into the snow. And sometimes it might look like there's not a ton of snow because people have just like packed the trail down before. And you don't actually realize how much snow there is until like your whole leg falls into the snow. And that happened to me on a hike this winter. I was just like lazy and didn't put my snowshoes on. And I just kind of like misstepped and like my whole leg went into the snow and I had to kind of have my friends help me up because I was totally stuck. So if you're hiking alone and you post hole, that can definitely be an issue because it was hard to get out. So definitely like always bring your snowshoes, even if you feel like you're not going to need them, just because you never know like what conditions are going to be like more towards the summit too. And then if it's super icy or super steep, you're going to have your full crampons. As you can see, these have like the biggest spikes on them. So this will just go like right into like super icy areas. And these you just kind of like wrap around and attach to your boots. But if you're doing more of the intense hikes, like if you're going up Mount Washington in the winter, you're gonna have crampons that just clip on to those double plastic mountaineering boots that I mentioned earlier. So those will just be like a little bit more stable and give you a little bit better of a grip versus these, which are still like, I mean, these still work, just to be like extra cautious, you'll probably want to have like a better grip on your crampon. So then in terms of like other gear, you have to have a bag that will carry all of this stuff. So I just bring my like backpack that I bring on summer backpacking trips. It's good to have a headlight because, as I mentioned earlier, the sun goes down at like 4. So if you're doing a longer hike, you're probably going to be either starting or ending in the dark. You definitely need to bring water, obviously, because you do exert a lot of energy in the winter. So this is the water bottle I bring. It is insulated. In the summer, I'll bring like a water bladder with one of those hoses, but you really can't bring those in the winter because they freeze super quickly. So this is a insulated water bottle, and if you're going on like a longer hike or if it's going to be super cold, I'll put boiling water in here in the start of the day, or just hot water. And then this isn't really enough for a long hike. So I have another water bottle, just like a normal one, but I'll wrap it in a wool sock so that way that kind of keeps warm. And then in terms of food, you want to bring things that are like super easy to eat on the go, because when it's 7 degrees, you're not going to be like stopping at the summit and sitting down on the snow for a nice lunch. You just want things that you can eat when you walk. And I've learned over time that some food does freeze faster than others. So like in the summer, I'll always bring a peanut butter sandwich, but in the winter, the bread freezes kind of weird. So I've changed it to like Ritz crackers and peanut butter because the crackers don't freeze as easily. It's the same with like Cliff Bars. Like I love Cliff Bars, but they also freeze. So if I bring one, I just have to know that I'm going to eat it like in the beginning of my hike. Chips don't freeze, trail mix, some like chocolate covered espresso beans are a really good snack because they handle the cold well, and it's also like a burst of energy. Some people will bring like tea or even like hot soup in an insulated water bottle. So then they kind of have like a nice treat when they're at the summit or on their way down or something. So that's kind of it for the gear. But like it's kind of like trial and error. Like you're gonna like bring a snack that like you realize doesn't really work in the winter, and then like the next time you'll try something else. It's kind of the same with the gear. Like it'll take a while just to figure out what works for you, and everyone is a little different. Everyone handles temperatures in a different way, but it's definitely just important to be prepared. And then some of the advantages of winter hiking. I know it's like, it sounds like a lot of work. There's like a lot of gear and a lot of things to think about, but it can definitely be really fun too. So this is a trail that's from October. You can see that there's like some snow on the trees, but that kind of like pile of rocks is just the trail. So in the winter, if that's all like snowed over and it's packed down, you're gonna kind of have just like a single track to walk up versus a ton of rocks. So it can be easier on the knees and on your back just because you're not like climbing over rocks the whole time. There's also the fact that it's really not very crowded in the winter. Like in the summer, a lot of these summits just have a lot of people on them, but in the winter, you know, not everyone likes to be outside in the cold temperatures. So it can be like more empty, sometimes deserted. So that can be really nice. Glissading is also an advantage of winter hiking, which is basically just like sledding down the mountain. Sometimes people will bring like small circular sleds to use, but also if you're wearing like rain pants like I showed, those are pretty slippery, so those will just work as well, and they'll protect you from like getting super wet. So you just like, it is what it is. You just like sit down and slide down the mountain, and it's really fun. These are 2 pictures of my friend. In the first one, you can see he's kind of like sheltered by trees. So that's pretty much, you just sit down and go. But in the second one, you can see he's like on a much more exposed mountain face, and it's hard to tell in the picture, but he's actually holding an ice axe just in case he kind of loses control. He can self-arrest with the ice axe. So that way he doesn't go just like flying down the mountain. So being in the trees definitely protects you more. I've never self-arrested with an ice axe. I have been on a trip where someone else had to because they slipped and fell. So it definitely can be like a scary situation. So again, it's all about being prepared. But glissading is super fun. You'll be surprised at how quickly you can get down something that took you hours to walk up. There have been multiple times this past winter where it's been like 3:30, and it's like, oh, we're gonna have to, walk out in the dark, but then we start going down and we're back down in like a half hour. And also the advantages of winter hiking is that there are really pretty views. So here are just a few pictures that I have from my various winter hikes. And yeah, it's really pretty. You can definitely tell, like in this one, I like how like the snow kind of reflects the blue sky, and you can see the blue on the mountains. That's it. So any questions?
That was really great, Stephanie.
Thanks.
I do have a couple of questions that I wrote down.
Yeah.
So you mentioned all of your gear and especially the traction items. So the micro spikes and the crampons and the snowshoes. Do you plan for what you're going to need ahead of time, or do you bring all of them like on the off chance that you're going to encounter something that you need?
Yeah, I definitely plan for what I need, but it is dependent on like where we are in the season too. Like in the beginning of winter, you're more likely to be good with just micro spikes because like the snow won't be that deep. But as you get into like January, February, even if you are going on a trail that you think will have a lot of use, so you think it'll be packed down, it's important to bring them anyway, just because you never know, with the wind could create like really big snow drifts. So a trail that was packed down like 2 days ago could be like full of snow again. And then for crampons, I'll only bring them if I know that I'm going on something like super steep. And what I'll do just to be extra prepared is that people, especially in the winter, will write trail reports and post them online. And they'll always say like what traction they used. So I'll always go through and like read the ones for the hike that I'm doing, just to see what other people have used in the past.
Do you have any recommendations for like what your favorite like sites are for finding those trail reports, or for finding, I know that you said like not to use your iPhone's like weather app, like where are your favorite information?
The forecast I always look at is, I'm pretty sure it's just called Mountain Forecast, and you can just like search for a specific peak. There's also the Mount Washington Observatory, and they do updated forecasts, I think, every day. And those are kind of like the most detailed, but they're also the most scientific, so they might be like a little bit too detailed. And then for the trail reports, I forget off the top of my head what the website is. It might even be just like nhtrails.com. Some people also post them on like Reddit forums. So there are like a few options out there.
Cool. I think those might be my only questions.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.